Welcome to today's training session for managers and supervisors. Why employment law training? Federal lawsuits charging violations of labor and employment laws have increased by more than 125% since 1991 and faster than any other area of civil rights legislation. With jury awards getting much larger in recent years, it further emphasizes the need to understand employment laws and how they apply in the workplace. Today's training is to help you understand the importance of the responsibilities you hold as a manager in assuring compliance with all the laws related to employment. We often hear in HR that we need to become a strategic partner and know the business in order to be part of running the company. Well, in HR, we believe partnering with you, the managers and supervisors, will be an even greater opportunity to better run the operations and the continued success of our organization. By working together, we will bring out the best in our company's most valuable resource, the people. Today we will cover a number of topics and also provide a high-level overview of the most common laws affecting these topics in the workplace. As we go through the topics, we will also cover how they apply to you. So let's get to it. Discrimination is a very familiar word in our society today. Important for managers to understand is that discrimination is based on protected group status. A protected group status is an individual who falls within a group that is qualified for protection under equal employment laws. Federal laws protect individuals from discrimination based on sex, race, age, disability, color, national origin, religion, military status, pregnancy, and genetics. Discrimination can appear when hiring, ending employment, promoting, transferring, or compensating employees when factors are considered that fall into these protected categories. Only consider the skills, abilities, requirements of the position, and job performance when making these types of decisions. To help us understand, some examples of this might be denying certain individuals pay raises or benefits because of pregnancy or because of a disability. Another might be excluding employees in a company-sponsored function due to their race or gender. When considering a promotion, transfer, pay raise, or even leave, and your decisions are different based on military, pregnancy, a disability, the person's race, or religion, these would all be examples of discrimination of protected groups. There are two areas to understand when discrimination may appear in the workplace. The first is disparate impact. This is unintentional discrimination and can occur when policies, practices, and other systems appear to be neutral but result in a disproportionate impact on a protected group. An example of this could be in a grocery store. They have a policy to hire only men to be baggers and only want women to be cashiers. Another could be the requirement to lift 50 pounds overhead. The policies unintentionally discriminate based on gender, assuming women cannot lift 50 pounds overhead. A real-life example of this is the case of Griggs versus Duke Power. Prior to implementation of Title VII, Duke Power hired black workers into all black labor classifications, which paid less than all white labor classifications. After Title VII, Duke Power implemented 2 aptitude tests and required proof of completion of high school for anyone applying to work in the formerly all-white classifications. Neither of these requirements measured an employee's ability to learn or do the job. Those new rules constituted illegal discrimination and disparate impact. Disparate treatment is another form of discrimination. It is intentional. Some examples might be excessive supervision over one person more than another, requiring documentation for sick leave from one and not another. You might even delay a bonus or overtime for one when others received it. Disciplining a person for certain behaviors when others are allowed to behave in the same way would be another example of disparate treatment. As managers and supervisors, be sure the job description and requirements to be successful in the position when making hiring decisions. Do not make decisions to promote, give a raise, or who gets the prime shifts based on anything other than performance, skills, experience, and abilities. These decisions should not ever include factors such as race, age, disability, or if someone is pregnant. You can help by understanding what constitutes discrimination, and be sure employment decisions are based only on the skills, experience, knowledge, and the requirements of the positions. When there are any questions, don't hesitate to contact HR. But most of all, be involved in your work areas and be aware of comments and interactions with your teams. And do not allow any discriminatory actions or practices nor comments to go unaddressed. Harassment is defined as unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature that affects a person's employment, unreasonably interferes with a person's work performance, or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. The victim, as well as the harasser, may be a woman or a man, and could be of the same sex. The harasser could be a supervisor, a coworker, or a non-employee. The victim does not have to be the direct recipient of the harassment, but may be affected by the offensive conduct. The laws discussed on the previous slide also cover harassment. The difference is discrimination focuses on employment decisions, where the focus of harassment is on the work environment. There are 3 areas of harassment we will review today. The first is quid pro quo, which is something for something. An example of quid pro quo is one you may have heard on the news lately regarding an allegation against the Jared and Kay Jewelers Corporation. The allegations that management offered promotions, raises, and relocation to better stores in exchange for sexual favors would constitute an example of quid pro quo sexual harassment. Another area of harassment is the hostile work environment. This can occur when an environment is created by a leader or a coworker whose actions, communication, or behavior makes doing the job impossible. A coworker who is obnoxious and smacks gum does not constitute a hostile work environment. However, a coworker who tells sexually explicit jokes or sends pictures of nude people through company email is creating a hostile work environment. Another example might be when a group of employees is having lunch and a coworker shares a story about lazy Mexicans from his last job. One person at the table tells the coworker that her family is Mexican. The coworker says he didn't mean her family. Nonetheless, this constitutes a hostile work environment. Even though it is not sexual in nature, it has created a hostile work environment because the coworker has made derogatory and offensive comments about a person's race and ethnic background. Third-party harassment is another type of harassment that covers anyone doing business with the company, such as contractors, customers, vendors, and suppliers. An example could be someone from our vending machine company who makes an inappropriate comment to one of our employees while they are here filling the machines. This is inappropriate conduct and should be reported. It is harassment even though the harasser is not an employee. So what should you do? Supervisors should not engage in or allow comments in the workplace that could be offensive to others. Supervisors who are aware of potentially harassing situations should discuss with HR promptly. Managers and supervisors should schedule all employees, including yourselves, to attend the required training. This required annual training covers the policies and process for reporting harassment. Prevention is the very best tool to eliminate sexual harassment in the workplace. Communicate your expectations for a cohesive and collaborative work team and a positive work environment. Contact HR when you become aware of any inappropriate workplace behaviors in order to address them in a timely manner and resolve the issues. Your role is to help prevent harassment in the workplace by assuring clear communication of policies and to never allow inappropriate actions to continue. The Equal Pay Act addresses pay for men and women who are in the same or similar positions. This act requires that men and women be given equal pay for equal work in the same establishment. The jobs must be substantially equal, meaning the jobs must be similar enough that the effort, skills, and responsibilities performed in the role under the same working conditions within the same establishment are the same for men and for women. It is important to note that pay differences are allowed based on seniority, merit, quantity, and quality, but are not allowed based on the gender of a person performing the job. An example that demonstrates this could be a male manager who made $130,000 as the manager of a call center and was promoted to vice president. The female manager who was hired after him was paid $90,000 for the same position, role, and responsibilities. After 1 year in the position, her pay was not increased, and she continued to make $40,000 less than the former manager who was a male. This could constitute a violation of the Equal Pay Act. Another example that could affect you and your jobs today would be two positions within your departments. Both employees make $10 per hour, one as a receptionist and the other as a janitor. Based on the increase in usage of equipment, it was decided more janitorial work is needed, so more hours are scheduled to the janitor, who is a man, and the pay for the position is also raised to $12 per hour. The receptionist, who is a female, does not receive an increase in pay or additional hours. Would you think this is an issue? It is not, because the jobs are not similar enough in responsibilities and required skills to be compared as the same job. The janitor position requires a different set of skills than the receptionist position, and the decision was based on the needs of the company and not due to the gender of the janitor. So how might this apply to you? When deciding your annual merit increases or promotions in your areas, remember to base the pay on the performance during the previous year. Be careful not to allow your decisions to be influenced by specific things, such as whether a man can lift objects or a woman talks more clearly over the phone. Timekeeping and pay are very important topics and may be more familiar to you. The Fair Labor Standards Act is the federal law that governs pay and record keeping of time records. The FLSA focuses on three main areas: minimum wage, overtime pay, and child labor rules. The FLSA requires employers to keep detailed records of time worked and pay received for each employee. When disputes occur, these records are used to determine if the company has complied with the laws regarding pay. The FLSA also establishes a minimum and overtime wage for non-exempt employees and holds oversight of the establishment of exempt and non-exempt classifications in the workplace. The FLSA also requires overtime to be paid to any employee who works more than 40 hours in a work week at 1.5 times their rate of pay if they are in the non-exempt classification. The FLSA provides guidelines to determine the status of employees based on their work responsibilities as exempt or non-exempt. A series of questions referred to as tests will help to determine whether an employee is eligible for overtime pay or is not eligible for overtime pay. Exempt employees are those that hold responsibilities that exempt them from receiving overtime pay for time worked. Non-exempt employees are those that are paid for all time worked and received pay for over 40 at a rate of 1.5 times their rate of pay for the hours worked. Independent contractors are those we hire to help with the expansion of the warehouse and sometimes to help write code for the computer systems. They are paid by the job and are not within the control of the employer. Child labor is another area covered by the FLSA. Once an employee is 18, child labor rules no longer apply. States are responsible for issuing child labor certificates and also have laws pertaining to protect young workers. We receive requests for children of our employees to work for the summer, and we enjoy the opportunity to employ 15 and 16-year-old children of our employees. The jobs that are available vary, but include cleaning, lawn maintenance, and some clerical assistance. Your role in this is to be sure all hours worked are documented accurately. Be sure employees are not working while they are not clocked in. If overtime is worked, it must be paid. If overtime was not approved, we can discuss remedies for that, but adjustments to timesheets must not be made to look as if the employees did not work the overtime. What you should remember most about this topic is the importance of accurate timekeeping. Administered by the Department of Labor, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, OSHA, is the primary federal law which governs health and safety in the workplace. OSHA ensures that employees are provided with a safe and healthy work environment, free from hazards, toxic chemicals, loud noise levels, dangerous conditions, unsanitary conditions, and extreme cold or hot situations. This will not be a new topic for anyone here today. Safety meetings are held each month with your teams, and the Safety Advisory Committee meets to review any areas of concern beyond what can be handled at the department level. We are committed to providing a safe work environment for everyone, and it is unacceptable that any of us would overlook any safety issue or potential hazard. Workers' compensation is another area. It is governed at the state level and offers pay for employees who have been injured and are out for 14 days due to the work injury. When employees are injured on the job, there is job protection. They receive pay and medical bills are paid that are related to the injury. So how can you prevent workplace injury? Remember that safety is everyone's responsibility. That may sound cliche, but it is the truth. Each one of us will see a situation and may see something that is potentially dangerous at one time or another. Some examples of potentially dangerous work situations are mislabeled chemicals, not wearing appropriate safety protection, and something as simple as a burned out light bulb. All workplace injuries should be reported immediately and action should be taken to address the cause of the injury. No incident is too small to consider as a workplace injury. Be as cautious as you would as if it was a family member. Although we discuss safety quite often, it can never be taken for granted or overlook anything that could cause injury or illness in our workplace. There are several areas of job protected leave to cover. Most managers and supervisors are familiar with family medical leave, but you may not be familiar with laws that pertain to Uniform Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act, known as USERRA, or the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. These are areas that also provide job protected leave for employees under certain circumstances. The Family and Medical Leave Act entitles employees to take unpaid job-protected leave for specified family and medical reasons. Employees are eligible when they have completed 1 year with the company or have worked 1,250 hours. 12 work weeks of leave in a 12-month period are possible for the following reasons: the birth or adoption of a child, to care for the employee's spouse, child, or parent who has a serious health condition, or a serious health condition that makes the employee unable to perform the essential functions of the job. There are also special provisions for military family members. Any qualifying exigency arising out of the fact that the employee's spouse, son, daughter, or parent is a covered military member on covered active duty, or 26 work weeks of leave during a single 12-month period to care for a covered service member with a serious injury or illness if the employee is the service member's spouse, son, daughter, parent, or next of kin. This is known as the military caregiver leave. It's important to note that you may hear from time to time that some states and companies have expanded the benefits beyond what is required by the federal law. Another law that provides job protected leave is USERRA. It provides the job rights of service members who volunteer or involuntarily leave employment positions to perform service in the military. USERRA affects employment, reemployment, and retention in employment when employees are serving. A returning service member will be reinstated to the same job, pay, and benefits that they would have attained if they had not been absent for military service. Many of you are aware of the Americans with Disabilities Act, as it has been part of our discussion when FMLA was exhausted for some of our employees. A reasonable accommodation under the ADA could be leave from the job. To qualify for leave, there would be an expectation of a possible return date. For example, if FMLA has been exhausted and the employee needs more time away from work, it could be covered as a reasonable accommodation. The employee would need to let us know an approximate date they would be returning to work. Leave covered under the ADA is not necessarily job protected, but employment would be offered when the employee is able to return to work. As leaders in our company, it is important to understand what is possible when employees have absences or ask for time away from work. You may become aware of significant family health concerns, or there are family members of the military who need the employee's support. In these types of situations, it's your role to let the employee know that they may be eligible for family medical leave. After becoming aware of reasons that could be long-term and/or serious, you should ask employees to request information from HR. There are tons of forms that must be issued and communicated back to the employee, so you will be happy to have HR handle this for you. Once an employee is approved for family medical leave, we will notify you of the expectations and time needed away from work. This could include intermittent leave, which means the employee could call out or leave without notice, which makes it more difficult to assure consistent productivity. The time for family medical leave will be tracked by HR based on the timesheets. Again, the importance of accurate timekeeping. Note that employees do not need to say the words FMLA to be protected under this law. Be careful when you're counting absences and issuing discipline based on the attendance policy. Ask questions and understand the reasons for the absence, and seek HR guidance when you need it. The National Labor Relations Act, the NLRA, is administered by the National Labor Relations Board. The NLRA defines the rights of employees and employers to include their rights to collectively bargain and engage in concerted activities in the workplace, such as grievances and strikes. In our workplace, there are no unions. However, we shouldn't become complacent and think a time will not come when employees may want to consider a union. The NLRA protects this right to all employees to choose to be represented by a union. In the context of our workplace today, we have a great work environment, and it is a benefit for the employee and the supervisor to work directly to resolve any issues. When employees and supervisors work openly and honestly to resolve workplace issues, there's less reason for employees to feel they need to be represented. Another area that is relevant and is covered under the NLRB is the recent news about Facebook firings. The NLRB has gotten a lot of attention lately due to the news that employees have been fired because of posts on social media. They were speaking out about their concerns about their employer, and some even calling out coworkers due to issues at work. Most items posted of this nature would be considered concerted activity, meaning employees can talk about conditions of work anywhere they choose to. Concerted activity is protected under the NLRB. Let's be very cautious when discussing or taking any actions based on employee posts on social media sites. Employees have the option to post information about their jobs and also hold conversations with other employees on conditions of work. But there are limits. The NLRB has stated that workers' social networking and social media usage can be protected if it's concerted activity for the purpose of collective bargaining, mutual aid, or protection. The employee protesting about working condition might be protected, while complaining about a boss might not be. Another topic that we often hear managers communicating that it is not correct is employees should not discuss their pay. Although it is not a good practice and often causes some hard feelings, it is a protected activity and employees may discuss their salaries if they choose to. While most do not, some choose to. Management should not tell employees they cannot discuss wages, conditions of work, or what they post on social media. If there are specific questions, and if you become aware of questionable posts, please come and meet with us so we can determine the appropriate action. As managers and supervisors, you should be familiar with the policies in place related to social media. The policies are in place for employees to make informed decisions when they are making posts to social media, especially related to their work environment. Everyone should know the expectations of the company when it comes to harassment, protecting trade secrets, prohibiting the use of our trademarks, using logos and images on social media, and sharing confidential information held within the organization, and should not post anything of this nature. Let's build strong relationships with our employees and continue to promote the open door policy in order for anyone to voice their concerns about the workplace. We may not be able to respond affirmatively, but the way we will respond will be respectfully and honestly with all our employees. I shared a little earlier that an accommodation could be job protected leave when we discussed the Americans with Disabilities Act. So for the purpose of defining accommodations, we will discuss the definition of a disability and its effects. A person with a disability is someone who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. Employers must consider reasonable accommodations to help employees with disabilities to do their job unless it causes an undue hardship. An undue hardship is one that causes the employer significant difficulty or expense, considering the cost of the accommodation as related to the size, resources, nature, and structure of the operation. We want our employees to be successful, so it is our desire to make these accommodations as much as possible. You notice that we already order standing workstations, footrests, different types of chairs, and glare screens regularly. These are reasonable accommodations that help our employees to perform the essential functions of their positions and even more. This demonstrates we will do whatever is reasonably possible to accommodate or adjust to be sure this is possible. When we discuss reasonable accommodations, the first response we hear is, "What is reasonable?" A reasonable accommodation is a change to a job or the workplace that allows employees with disabilities to do their jobs. Remember, reasonable means something that can be done without significant difficulty or expense. There are times when a request for accommodation may be an undue hardship. Things that are considered when making accommodations are the nature and cost of the accommodation, the financial resources of the employer, and what accommodations have already been made. A simple example of a possible undue hardship might be the request to install an elevator at each end of the building when one already exists in the middle of the building. With the size of our workplace, it is reasonable to expect that anyone needing the elevator would be able to get to the middle of the building to use it. Installing elevators at each end of the building would be an undue hardship and unrealistic with the size of our building. The costs and impact to productivity would make it an undue hardship for our company. Many accommodations can be made that cost little to nothing. When an employee is having difficulty performing their job, it's important to conduct something known as an interactive process. It's a meeting with the employee to ask what is needed to be able to meet the essential functions of the position. Once the meeting has occurred, we will be able to determine how we may be able to help. It's important to note that typically the employee should initiate the request for accommodation, which would initiate the interactive process meeting. Once the manager or supervisor becomes aware of the request, the response should be discussed with HR within 2 days. This is another opportunity for HR and operations to partner, as we will help to conduct the interactive process to discuss with the employee what accommodations may help them to meet the essential functions of the job. The request will be discussed with the appropriate persons, and a decision is delivered to the employee in writing. Be open to discuss concerns with your employees. Don't ever outright deny requests without engaging in this interactive process with the employee and involving the HR department. Be aware of comments in the workplace like, "I have attention deficit disorder," as this could be a sign of possible disability affecting job performance. Remember that employees should contact you, but if you are aware of any issues with job performance, be discreet, address in an appropriate manner, and involve HR at the very beginning. This concludes our training session for today. Overall, we are hopeful you recognize there are many laws that affect our workplace and interactions with our employees. We are confident this training has provided some insights and awareness for the most common areas that managers and supervisors face. The information contained in this presentation will be provided to each of you and follow up as needed. Note the last 2 pages of this presentation are references that will help you to learn even more about the employment laws that affect the workplace. Please do not hesitate to contact any member of HR to discuss any questions or if additional information or clarification is needed. Thank you for attending the training session today, and we look forward to partnering with you to continue to make our workplace successful.